Good morning, students. We'll continue with our unit number 3 and topic number 2, which is the continuation of our last topic, that is site. So, in continuation with our last topic, which is site, is first one, hazards on the construction site. So, there are a huge range of hazards of construction sites which could cause accidents or harm to workers and visitors. And taking this into consideration when planning out the site, the following points should be taken into consideration. The first one, falling objects. You must prevent objects falling beyond the site boundaries. While scaffolding, you do this with toe boards, brick guards, or netting. Storage and stacking. A good way of preventing accidents with stored materials or equipment is to have them in a separate compound away from the main site and public access. Next, excavations. Workers and the public can be injured if they fall into excavations, manholes, etc. So therefore, making sure barriers and covers are necessary to ensure everybody's safety. Other things to bear in mind are hazardous substances, slips, trips and falls, dust, noise and vibrations, and the last one is energy sources. Next, material storage and waste management on construction sites. Because the law states that we should keep our construction site in good order, it is paramount that the storage and disposal of materials on site is done so in a safe and efficient manner. Material storage on a construction site. Good material storage depends on adequate planning and cooperation from all parties. For large projects, the storage of materials will be included in the construction plan. However, for smaller projects, we may want to consider the following again. For storage areas, having designated storage areas for each of the different materials we are storing is important, particularly if storing hazardous materials. Next, flammable materials. And hazardous materials will need to be stored away from the other storage areas and ensure that they are protected from accidental ignition or contamination. At height, if you have to store materials at a height, make sure that the guardrails are in place, that is, the railings are in place, and necessary mechanical aids are on hand to prevent falls or injuries. Then, tidiness. Keeping the storage areas tidy should be a number priority and something that is checked every day. Deliveries. Having a delivery plan helps keeping the material stored on site on to a minimum as well as restricting the amount of personnel accessing the area. Next, waste management on a construction site. So before you start to work on the construction site, we need to think about how the waste produced will be managed and who will be responsible for the disposal of the waste produced on site, as well as dealing with any problems which may arise. Things to consider are flammable materials. Flammable waste materials will need to be cleared away daily, and you can get special cans and bins for this until they need to be removed from the construction site. Skips. Make sure that there is enough space for skips and industrial bins, that is for dustbins, on the site for the storage of waste and enough room for maneuverability when they are being taken away or delivered. Waste inside buildings. When working inside of a building, make sure that there are enough wheel bins to allow for effective disposal of any waste generated whistle working on the inside of buildings. Next, welfare on a construction site. Welfare relates to the treatment and facilities that workers and visitors are subjected to while working or visiting the construction site. So they will need to access adequate toilet and washing facilities, a place for preparing and eating refreshments, and somewhere for storing or drying clothing or protective equipments. Waste inside buildings. When working inside of a building, make sure that there are enough wheel bins to allow the effective disposal of any waste generated while working on the inside of buildings. Then, welfare on a construction site. Welfare relates to the treatment and facilities that workers and visitors are subjected to while visiting the construction site. So, they will need to access adequate toilet and washing facilities, and also for preparing and eating refreshments, and for storing and drying clothes and protective equipments. So list of required facilities are cited below. First one is toilets, second is washing facilities, third is drinking water, fourth is changing rooms and lockers, fifth is facilities for rest, then administration on construction site. When working on a managing a construction site, there are a number of assessment and reports which needs to be submitted in order to comply and to be lawful. We have bullet pointed the points for ease. First one is notification. Second is risk assessments. Third is CDM plan and file. Fourth, thorough examination reports. Fifth, inspection reports. Sixth, method statements. And the last one is any injuries or dangerous occurrences. So you can give your attendance in the chat box now. Thank you.
First introduction, and then we are going to see classification of roads, different types of road and how it is classified, and then we are going to move into parking criteria, different type of parking and what has to be done and what should not be done, so that we can make your design according to it, and we can design your road systems with less traffic congestion, and it is much more beneficial for the users. Vehicular and pedestrian circulation. Non-urban roads within the country are classified into 6 types. So these are different types of classification done in India. First is expressway, and then we have national highways, and then state highways. So usually these are different type of highways which is present to mobilize from one location to far off location, and it is usually carries goods, goods and commodities in large quantities, and it is very wide. And then we have major district roads, other district roads and village roads. These three are comparatively much lesser scale, but it takes a lot of more population, because it is in inter roads or intercity roads, which has a lot of people commuting it on a daily basis, but the width and size of the road is less compared to the expressways, because expressways is the one that is going to take care of a lot of heavy vehicles, but whereas these ones are our everyday public transportation and private transport, public and private transport is going to get moved along these type of roads. So now let's move on to see what detail for each of these classification. First, expressways. The purpose of expressways would be to cater for motility of large volume of motor traffic at high speed. They connect major areas of increasing visitor count, and they are intended to serve trips of medium and long length in between prominent residential areas, industry or business concentration, and in central business district. So expressways is a type of road network which is mainly used to transfer your goods or commodities from one area to another other. So it is a broad, it's like a broad way in which you can it is used to move heavy vehicles with goods or raw materials. Vehicle parking, loading and unloading of products and passengers and pedestrian traffics are not allowed in these kinds of highways. So as we know, since expressways are going to connect between two main areas, we cannot entertain people stopping at every point, so that it will delay the whole process of goods being transferred from one point to other. So so the whole road system is designed in such a way it does not promote parking or intersection or making U-turns, so that goods can be transferred in a short distance and much more quickly. National highways, these include main highways running throughout the distance and breadth of the country, connection of major paths, highways of adjoining countries, state capital, large commercial and tourist centers, etc. National highways is roads that connects within the country or within the state are called national highways, which is mainly used for used by public as well as for goods to get, or as well as the goods to get transferred. When public use it, it is mainly used to communicate from one place to a very far off place. So, and when the goods get transferred, or it is being distributed from the major place to within the city or within the district. State highways, these include main arterial routes of any state connecting district headquarters and major cities in the state and connecting these with the national highways of the neighboring state. State highways is the road system which is going to run within your state. So national highways is the one that runs throughout the country, and from the goods that is being taken from the national highways is finally going to get transferred to the state highways, which is going to distribute everything, all the raw materials or the products within the state using state highways. So you can see a lot of difference in the pictures of how in Broadway is, expressway looks, and how your national highway is, and how your state highway is. Major district roads, these are essential roads within a district serving parts of production and market and linking these together or while using the main highways. So these are major district roads which is going to get connected to a state highway, in from which everything is going to get transferred and then it is going to get distributed even much more in a smaller scale. When you have these segregations, there is a lot of time saving for the commodities to get transferred from one district to other. Say for example, if you're taking some goods from one district to the other district and there are a lot of intermediate smaller district, you can avoid going inside all this smaller district by taking just the state highways. A lot of time is being saved and efficiency in transferring these goods will increase when you have these separations, and everything, all the roads has been designed in such a way people do not waste their time in going inside and coming out. Other district roads, they are streets serving non-urban areas of production and providing them with outlet of market center, headquarters and other main roads. So these are other district roads, are your main roads that we are using in our daily basis to commute to our work, and other colleges and offices. So these are other district roads which are going to connect to our actual site, to our daily requirement, to commute to our daily requirement spaces. Village roads, these are roads adjoining villages or group of villager with each other and also the nearest road of any higher class urban roads. So village roads are the one or much more smaller compared to your district roads and other state highway roads. So this is going to be much more narrow because of the population that are going to use the road is less compared to city roads. So these are the roads which connects within a village, or it can also connect a group of villages. Urban roads are classified into your following 5 categories. First is expressways, atrial streets, subatrial streets, collector streets and local streets. So now looking just at the urban level, so within urban scenario we have 5 different classification of roads. So these are the list, and let's look into it each in detail. Expressways, the function of expressways is the similar regardless of if the transfers through urban areas or non-city. So it is very similar to what we saw what the expressways do. It takes or transports goods and services in huge quantity, huge quantity within an urban setup. Atrial streets, this system of streets together with the expressways where they exist serve as the key network for thorough traffic flow. These roadways may generally be spaced under 1 to 5 kilometer in hugely developed center business place and at 8 kilometer or maybe more in sparsely developed urban fringe. The atrial streets are generally divided highways with full or partial access parking, loading and unloading activities are usually restricted and regulated pedestrian should cross only at intersection. So this type of road is the one that is going to connect to your from your expressway to your much more district roads. So the streets which connects expressway and district streets can be called as atrial roads. So the width is comparatively lesser than expressway, but it is more than your district roads, and it is a place in which you are going to segregate your goods where you can have loading and offloading can happen so that it does not disturb the city activity, but and it also promotes faster transportation systems. Subatrial roads, these include functionally much like atrial street but with somewhat lower level of travel mobility. Their spacing are different from about 0 to 5 kilometer in the central downtown to 3 to 5 kilometer inside the suburban fringe. So subatrial roads are usually of length 0 to 5 kilometers, which is going to connect your atrial roads and your district roads. These are roads which is mainly used for travel mobility. Collector streets, the function of collector streets should be to locate visitors from nearby streets and feed it to their atrial and subatrial roads. So these are the main node points from which the population is going to get divided or going to take their own pathways to get into their final destination, or vice versa. They may be located in residential neighborhoods, commercial areas and industrial areas. Usually complete approach is granted on these roadways from abutting properties. So this is the road which is going to get connected to your local street, and the local street is going to take you to your site or your development. Local street, these are intended mainly to supply use of abutting property and normally will not carry substantial amount of traffic. Majority of visits in urban area originate from or terminate on these roads. So these are local streets are the ones that we use or that we move around on a daily basis, which is connecting the main nodes to your actual street level. Local streets could possibly be non-commercial, commercial or industrial depending on the prominent use of the nearby area. They permit unrestricted parking and pedestrian movements. So your local streets can be a combination of completely silent road to completely commercial road. It depends on in which area the streets are being designed and developed. Parking, automated parking, basic parking rule: do not park any vehicle on the part of road where traffic is moving. Drive the vehicle off the road onto the shoulder while stopping. Parking is an important aspect too in a site planning and layout principle, so that we do not create any traffic congestion or we do not stop the public from the movement. So we need to make sensible parking arrangements. So it can not only satisfy the people who are using it, but it also accommodates for the number of growth, or it can be used for the increasing growth pattern. Do not park in space in such a place where one do not have clear view for at least 50 meters in both directions. While designing a parking space, we must be sure we must create parcel of parking from which you can see on either sides almost 50 meters on either sides, so we have a clear vision of what is happening in the parking space. Do not park in the place that blocks a vehicle already parked, a sidewalk, crosswalk, pedestrian crossing, or road entrances. We must be sure each building has their own parking space and it does not block anything, any building or any activity that is already happening on the street. Do not park near the public entrance to hotel, theatre, or public hall when it is open to the public. It cannot be entertained to park your vehicle in front of a public building, so that people who are going to come inside the building are going to or will not have any place to get inside the building if there is a parking. So we must be sure these public buildings is not hindered by the parking. Do not park near any intersection or roundabouts. If you are parking near an intersection or roundabout, the person who are going to come behind you won't know what is, if there is a vehicle is going to come in front of him, or if there is any obstruction on the road that is happening, or any construction movement that is happening. So in order to give a clear vision of what is going to happen, the parking should be avoided in the corners. Park the vehicle on the left side in the direction of the traffic. So since in India we are using left side parking, so left side driving, we should provide parking on the left side or on the traffic movement direction. So now let's look into different types of parking. First we are going to see what is parallel parking, and then we are going to continue with angular parking. First, parallel parking. The term parallel parking means parking the vehicle in a line, that is front to rear. The parking area should be 1.5 times longer than the vehicle to be parked. Check the following rules for parallel parking. So parallel parking is parking two cars to the, parallel to each other and perpendicular to the street. So the length that is required for parking has to be 1.5 times the length of the vehicle that is going to get parked. Say for example, you have a large car parking and the length of the large car is say 5 meters. We might need 1.5 times, which is 5 plus 2.5 meters, which is going to be 7.5 meter length of parking space will be required if you choose this type of design. Slowly reverse into the space, providing for parking, turning and steering the wheel anti-clockwise. So you need to make sure your vehicle can be parked and it can take a reverse, and it can also take a and it can have a steering wheel which can rotate your which can ensure your vehicle can take a straight and then it can come out. So these are the considerations it has to be followed while making a parallel parking, so that your width of the road which is abutting your parking is wide enough to do all the process. Take care that you have cleared the vehicle ahead. When you take your vehicle outside, it should not be, your movement should not be stopped because there is something else which is restricting the movement. So you should make sure the roads in which the movement is going to happen is completely is not being blocked. After seeing the outside rear corner of the vehicle in front of your space, turn the steering wheel clockwise, bring the vehicle in line of the curb. So as you see, this is a curb. So you have to make sure your curb is perpendicular to your parking line. So you must design in such a way your roads have the space to do a complete straight perpendicular parking to the curb line. If the vehicle is not parallel to the curb, drive forward and straighten. Make sure the wheels of the car are straight. It has to be completely perpendicular to the curb line, and it has to fall parallel to each vehicle. So now we are going to see what happens if you are choosing an angular parking design. The term angular parking means parking the vehicle at an angle to the curb of the road. The following basic principle is to be followed in the angular parking. Parallel parking is parking vehicles completely perpendicular to a curb wall. So angular parking is parking at an angle to the in relationship to the curb wall, so that there you can save much more space, and parking is much more easier and effective compared to the parallel parking. So the rules that has to be followed are: first and foremost, look through the mirror and over the shoulder for traffic beyond you. give left indicator to signal to the vehicle behind that you intend to park the vehicle. So this is the process that happens when you park your vehicle, so that you must make sure you have points in which you see what the vehicle is coming behind you. So we can design, we can keep a place in which you can see a concave lens in which you get the vision of what's happening behind, so that you don't go and hit on the vehicle that is coming behind you while you're making this parking arrangement. Shear into the provided parking space and straighten the vehicle. Keep equal distance on both sides. Pull the handbrake and shift first or reverse gear. When you park your vehicle, you must be sure it is being parked within the space allocated for one vehicle, and it does not interpret with the intrude with the other spaces. So it can be effectively followed, and the harmony can be kept throughout. So next is perpendicular parking. By perpendicular parking, it means the parking at right angle of the road curb. Always reverse the vehicle in parking space so that you can exit comfortably. Pass ahead of the parked vehicle next to the available space. Turn the steering anti-clockwise and reverse slowly until you are in the center of the parking space. Close the window and lock the vehicle. When you go for a perpendicular parking, it is also a parking type which is completely perpendicular or forms a 90-degree to the curb wall. So this type of parking can be used when you have space available for your parking design is more compared to your angular parking, and you must ensure you have right space for your turning and making your reverse. Precautions while passing parked vehicles. Be careful while passing by a parked vehicle. Never open the door without looking. Beware, a child might be playing or can come in front of your vehicle hidden. So while designing it, you must be sensitive what is happening around the corner.